And what they do, they bring these girls in, and they put a cable, they weld a point on a cable, and put it through their wrist, and then they put it on a truck and lift about 8 or 10 of them up in the air. Because the cable was one tree and another tree, lift them up in the air, and go down with a bayonet and cut a child out of everyone. Every time I saw a German, you know, it would scare the hell out of me, because I realized how vicious they were.
These are the frontline testimonies of a generation that came together to put their lives on the line to protect our freedoms. We owe it to them to always remember World War II. Please don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. These 3 things will help this channel continue to put out new videos every week. Please consider becoming a Patreon subscriber in order to help us fund travel to interview these incredible soldiers. And please reach out if you know any pro-veteran businesses that would be interested in sponsoring a video.
Hello, my name is Andy or Andrew Filak. The last name is pronounced like lilac. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio in 1927, July 12th, 1927. Anyway, I ended up in New York and finally got into the service when I joined the Army. And I was transferred to the Signal Corps and became a cameraman, motion picture cameraman, learning how to run Mitchells and Aeroflex movie cameras, IMOs, and speed graphics. You know, it's the large, old-fashioned speed graphic. In fact, I shot a lot of pictures of atrocities I saw in the gas chambers and all the various things. And because we had to shoot and document a lot of the stuff. So then, when I finished that training, I was sent off to Europe, which was a long journey in January. And but the different parts of the war, they had a lot of mock-up operations going on. During the war, they dropped leaflets saying the war would be over, and it wasn't over. And people would come out in the streets and get murdered, and it was horrible. So when the war was over, it was hard telling everybody that the war was over, as far certain groups of military would still be in. Germans would be holding out in little groups, trying to defend themselves, and not knowing that the war is over, and then come out in the streets and kill people, and it was a horrible time. But Germany itself, in Berlin, there's nothing left in Berlin. It was just absolutely leveled. When I got there, it was leveled. You're walking on rubble. And what they did, they had outfitted tanks and other equipment they had to make blades so that they could shovel the roads just to get cars through. And they were doing that all over Europe. I got there in January, so it was about 4 to 5 months still. But if you went to anywhere in Europe, you couldn't find an area that was not leveled, and rock and stone everywhere. It was just unbelievable. And the reason the Signal Corps was so important during the war, all wars have rules, and all wars have somebody that has to document whether those rules are being followed. You know, like you're not allowed to blow up a cathedral. You're not allowed to do certain things. You're not allowed to shoot the people that you capture, you know, and that's against the rules. So all these rules, there's a cameraman there all the time, and they're shooting still pictures and movies, and we're all assigned to a van looked like an ambulance. Actually, they were old ambulances that were painted out, and they had a platform on top, so we could put our big Mitchells up on top. They had a generator behind, carry all our lights and stuff. And there's 3 of us, and there's 3 men in each of those units would be assigned a story, and we would go anywhere in Europe and do those stories. One of the things we did, we shot a movie on documenting how people were killed in these things. And so our little group got that assignment, and we went there and shot how people were murdered. And I have pictures of that. Yeah, these were in Malvern, and it was the guys would get bored, you know, in just gas chamber work because they were just jamming people into gas chambers, and they'd hold them in rooms before, and I've got pictures of those rooms, and I can show you that to you, and I can show you the gas chambers, but they would have different ways. They'd have, looks like 50 parking spots, you know, for your cars. Well, they're really small bins, and they'd have clips that hold their arms up there, their legs apart, and then when they had 50 of them filled, they had all these dogs. They'd release the dogs and let them go at them until they killed them all. The dogs, just for sport, because they were so bored with just doing what they were doing there. And every day they come up with different ways of killing people. And shooting, you know, different ways of shooting them, and the different ways of laying them in logs and burning them, and all different kinds. So we went there to shoot all the different ways they were killing them. And I think the worst one I've ever saw was Hitler wanted to have a super race. So he had these girls he would do tests on to find out who was the most educated, wonderful gal in Europe. Then he'd take all the Air Force guys, he figured they were pretty smart guys, and then he'd throw big parties for them all the time to get them together, and then they were supposed to not get married, but just have kids. And the kids would belong to the next rite. And those kids would grow up to be the continuation of the rite. So what would happen, a lot of these couples would actually fall in love, you know, and want to be married, and would try and get out of the program and run away together. And they'd be caught, and they'd be brought back. And that would happen quite often. And so to deter them from doing that, they set up bleachers. We saw these bleachers, and I saw the areas, the trees that they did this on. And we were there to document all these ways of it being killed. And what they do, they bring these girls in, and they put a cable, they weld a point on a cable, and put it through their wrist, and then they put it on a truck and lift about 8 or 10 of them up in the air. Because the cable was one tree and another tree, lift them up in the air, and go down with a bayonet and cut the child out of everyone, you know, in front of the girls that had run away. So they do different things like that. So there's probably about 50 different ways they kill people, and for different reasons and what they did that one for was they're documenting it to show other girls. You know, that's how we found out about it. And we were there and we asked what the tree and the cable was all about, and that's how we found out about it. And it's just unbelievable, you know, some of the things I saw. But as I said, we shot a lot. We shot probably, I'd say, my group, my 3 guys, the 3 of us, we probably shot about 25 different movies. This was pictures of people could come back after the war. The families who would try and see if they could get some ashes left over. There's tons of ashes everywhere, and they were put in buckets, and these buckets were put in these. People would come and pick them up. They didn't know what they were, but it was just symbolic. They just wanted some of those ashes because they knew somewhere in those ashes were their family. So they took advantage of that and gave them. These are the different ways. On the back here, I was talking about the dogs. This is a bunch of bins here where the people were actually tied into the bins, and then dogs were released on them until they were dead. And this is a room they were pushed into this room, waiting to get into the ovens, and they're all standing, and they kept pushing them in, pushing them in, pushing them in, until they're pushed so hard that they were rubbing to get walls in cells, and they're all standing. You can see how much blood is still on the walls. They were just, and then they would go out of this room into the gas chambers. This is the pictures of the actual gas chambers, and you can get an idea of the size of them. And the other picture there is this picture here with the cross in the ground. That's a wall that they used to line them up at and practice, not with a rifle or a gun, just a handgun, just using the handgun, how many people they could kill with a handgun. And that's what this wall was. And that's where the cross is put in the ground. Is the wall was all the way down, and they just stand out there all day long and shoot them and they couldn't get away. They're all the wall, because if they started to run, they'd really everybody would shoot at them. So they just kept them against the wall, shooting them until they're all dead.
So they were just human targets.
Yeah, but not with rifles, only handguns. And this is the Malden massacre case. I shot that part of the trial. So here's another good shot at a different type of oven that they used. These were ovens that are just slid into, and they're not like the stand-up ovens. These are stand-up ovens here. And they had another. I saw if I got these pictures. They had so many different ways of killing people. It was just they were bored, and the one on the left is just another one of the many ways of killing a person, is to tie him to a table and just beat him to death, crush his skull and every bone in his body until he's dead, and then put another person at the table. That's just different ways they're doing it. The left side is the actual trial, where they'd be in the trial and then hang a number on them. And then they'd take the films that they'd captured from the Germans and say, because the Germans, the rules of war, you had to shoot everything that you did. And when the Germans would be shooting all these pictures, we captured those movies and films and stuff like that, still pictures. And so these were still pictures and movies. And these guys, they say, number 20, you appear in this film by whose command? Who told you to do that? Who told you to kill that guy that way? And he'd say, well, number by this guy over here, at number 17, and then they'd go after that guy and say, why did you do this, And that was how the trials were conducted, to get to the top guy.
And I just want to make it clear, all the photos you have shown, sir, you actually took yourself. Right?
These are all I took myself, yes. It was so horrible that's why we had these different groups, that would go in, and we would shoot these things, and they'd ask us to come back and shoot more. And we'd say, no, get another guys to go in and shoot it, because it was that bad. I never wanted. I only did this 2 or 3 times. And as I said, we had about 50 Signal Corps groups. I was one 3-man group, and we did about 50 different movies. And we did about 3 of these, and I didn't want to go anymore. It was horrible. And get other guys to do it, and that's what we did. But anyway, we shot a lot of stories, and our group was pretty good. And we finally were given permission to shoot stories that were unassigned. And that was just like a miracle, to be that good of a group that they let us do stories that were unassigned. But I did shoot Nuremberg, and Nuremberg was very boring because it was set up a camera at each end of the trial, and the people were in the trial. And all you were doing was loading the camera with film. You didn't even swing it, just like you got it set up now, same way. And after about 8 hours a day, day in and day out, it just drives you nuts, even though it was damn interesting. Because what they do is they say, you, number 22, are in this film that we just got from Germany, you know, and you're doing this by whose command, you know. And then you'd say by 14 over on this side. And then they go after that guy. And that's what the whole trial was based on. My advice is to never, never let a war happen again. Never, because there's the wars are unexplainable. You can't explain the horror of a war. You can't explain it unless you're actually there. When you know, it's just unexplainable.
Hi everyone, my name is Rishi Sharma, and I need you to hear me out. You probably have no idea who I am and why I am even talking to you. So let me explain. I am the person who interviews all these World War II veterans that you see on the channel, and I am also the person who edits all these videos. I try to make the focus of these videos all on the veterans and their experiences in the war, because they deserve that undivided attention, so you will hardly hear my voice. Ever since I was a child, I have always been interested in World War II history, and I have always held a deep appreciation for the veterans who put their lives on the line in order for me to exist. I started interviewing World War II veterans in high school, and I instantly knew I had found my calling. I would literally ride a bike to a local retirement home every day after school to talk with these men. To meet these heroes face to face and to preserve their stories forever is the coolest thing in the world. After graduation, I decided that I wanted to interview every single World War II veteran of the Allied countries, and I just needed to figure out how to do it. Around that same time, the national news did a few stories about my mission, and I am blessed to have raised some money through GoFundMe and history grants. I also created a non-profit organization called Heroes of the Second World War, now known as Remember WWII. This was all in December of 2016. Since then, I have been on the road literally every day with just over 1,500 video interviews across basically all of the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, and Australia. This is not just a job for me. This is my life. Every day I am researching World War II veterans, getting in touch with them to set up interviews, traveling to interview them, doing research to prepare for the interview, conducting the interview, acting as the cameraman and the sound guy, then editing the interview. This is also not a job, because I have never taken a salary in these 5 years. All the money that is donated goes into traveling to meet and interview the World War II veterans. To cut costs, I sleep in the car. I limit myself to 1 meal per day, and I drive very long distances instead of flying. I'm not saying this to complain, because in my mind it is worth it to meet my heroes, but I want you all to understand the intense amount of effort that goes into producing these interviews, as I am one person. It is also not practical when I can only edit the interviews based on when a library is open when it comes to getting more interviews on the channel. I need your help to get more World War II veterans preserved on camera. You see, despite my frugality, the GoFundMe money is hardly there anymore because of the amount of travel needed to get to these veterans plus camera expenses. For a while after this channel became popular, the YouTube ad money helped me stay afloat to keep conducting interviews. But YouTube has started arbitrarily demonetizing videos, or flags them as age restricted and will not promote them on the algorithm, so that money has dried up. I'm in a very tough position to keep these interviews going, and I need you all to consider stepping up to make sure our history is not erased, and that the sacrifices made by these World War II veterans will always be at the forefront of society's mind. These interviews are too important not to do. I am asking you humbly to consider becoming a Patreon supporter of this channel or donating to the nonprofit, which is tax deductible. For as little as $5 a month, you will get access to full-length interviews, bonus clips, the opportunity to talk with the veterans, and have your name shown in the credits, plus more. I have a list of 3,400 World War II veterans that I am in touch with in some way that still need to be interviewed, and I need your help to do this. These men literally saved the world, and I am trying my absolute hardest to make sure their sacrifices will never be in vain. These heroes deserve the opportunity to literally live forever and have their future generations 200 years from now not just get to know their name, but also the way the veterans speak, their personality quirks, what kind of jokes they tell, and the war stories they share. Wouldn't you like to have a video of your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather sharing his life stories? Well, you have the opportunity to give that gift to a group that truly deserves it. Besides the obvious historical value of these interviews, they are also used as an educational resource. Many schools and universities have actually incorporated the interviews from the channel into their Second World War curriculum. We have almost 110,000 subscribers, yet we only have 9 patrons. That math does not add up. The audience of this channel seems to be very pro-military and pro-veterans, which is great. I see so many of the same people write comments of appreciation and admiration for the veterans on many of the videos. I would hope that these people would also want to help preserve the stories of the veterans who they genuinely profess sentiments for. So if you truly care about these World War II heroes and their stories, which I'm sure you do, please consider contributing to this cause. Also, I am trying to find any pro-veteran businesses that would like to become a sponsor of the channel in exchange for advertisements in a video. If you know of anyone who would like to advertise to potentially millions for a small amount of money, which all goes to getting World War II veterans on camera, then please reach out to me via this email address. Thank you for hearing me out on this, and thank you for watching these videos. I've included links to the news stories about my mission and the Patreon page in the description and comments. As always, God bless the World War II veterans.
Please don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. These 3 things will help this channel continue to put out new videos every week. Please consider becoming a Patreon subscriber in order to help us fund travel to interview these incredible soldiers. And please reach out if you know any pro-veteran businesses that would be interested in sponsoring a video. And thank you for watching.